Okay, good. This is working now. Dad, stop digging in the trash. Okay. Alright, so today I will be doing a live stream of side character transmigrations. The final boss is no joke. So yeah, I've really liked this story and have been reading it for a long time. And I recently got in contact with Princess Xuan, who is the current translator, and got permission to do a voiceover for the thing. I'm really looking forward to it. This is a pretty hilarious story. The main character, Shi Sheng, is definitely overpowered, but I like her a lot because she doesn't fall into a lot of the typical main character archetypes. If you want to say, she's somewhat of a murder hobo, but usually when a female main character is very physically powerful, the male main character will be stronger than her, and then also she will always lose to him in a fight, and she's very submissive to him, even if she's very dominant towards everyone else. This story actually subverts that. In the female main character is absolutely a dominant top. Like, she makes everybody her bitch, and that goes double for her man, which is very rare to see in heterosexual romances. I don't always necessarily mind the normal dynamic. I mean, it's annoying that it's usually the only thing out there for, sexism reasons, but I'm not always like, I can tolerate it pretty well because I lean more towards the submissive side, and so, reading either BG or BL, it doesn't super bother me, but it is really refreshing and nice when you get something that doesn't fit the mold, and this does that, so I am very excited to be reading this today. I've mentioned this in other streams. I have previously done a little bit of reading aloud and voice work. I got permission for the translator for Transmigration with QQ Farms, and I've done about 5 chapters, which is actually more than 5 videos because the chapters are split into tiny parts. But I really do like that story, but it's a little bit slow and to start off, and so I was having a hard time motivating myself to do it constantly. And I'm not going to drop it, it's just I might want to have several other things going at the same time, and then I can kind of work on things and not get stuck on anything in particular. Anybody who's followed along with any of my previous readings, I've mostly just posted the YouTube videos flat out. I'm testing out a new thing because video editing kind of sucks. I use Camtasia, which is fairly easy to use, and I like it a lot. I've used it for a couple of years. When I was doing the Trans Youth channel is when I was first introduced to it, and I got a little bit of training, so I can do it fine. It's just lugubrious, and if you are really good and never make any mistakes, you almost have to do 0 editing. But I am not that talented. I'm currently trying to do vocal lessons, so maybe I'll get better at that as time goes by and editing won't be as much of a headache for me. But as of now, it's kind of really annoying. So I find myself wanting to do something and record, but then I end up not doing it because in order to post the video, I have to do, editing for 3 times. If I do a 5-minute video, I have to spend 15 to 20 minutes editing it before I can get it posted. And especially when my health is bad, that's just like a high barrier for me. And my health is always bad. So, yeah, I spend like 80% of my time bedridden. So, oops. I figured if I switch to live streaming, then I can live stream the videos. Live streams usually get archived, so they don't just disappear into the ether. I can keep sharing them. I haven't quite figured out how you find somebody's archived live streams. Like, I, as the creator, can share the link to the individual live stream archive, but if you go to my YouTube channel, you don't just see the list. So I'm still working out some of the details with that. But in the meantime, I figure I can do live streaming for now, just to get some of the chapters out. And then, cat, do not jump into the trash can. Thank you. And then, as I kind of have the time, I'll go through some of those old live streams and then, edit them into something more presentable and nice. Princess Xuan recommended background music. I'm not 100% on whether I'm going to do that or not, because I know I personally have auditory processing issues, so if there's background music at the same time somebody's talking, I can't separate the background music from the voice, and then I have no idea what the person is saying. So I'm on the fence, because if the background music is a lot quieter, sometimes it's okay, but other times it's kind of not, so not 100% on what I'll do with the final videos. Maybe I'll find some nice background music and then just post it in the comments for people to play at the same time if they want. I mentioned this in my previous live stream. I don't know that there's anything that will allow you to upload 2 separate audio files, so you can mute the background music if you want. That would be ideal, but as far as I know, that's not really like an available feature pretty much anywhere. Like, if I could go on a Netflix and just mute or turn down background music, that would be really cool. But the industry at large has not decided to make that available. So, yeah. Anyway, without further ado, I think I have said enough about why this novel is pretty great. And, yeah, I'm gonna get into reading it. Thank you for joining me, and here we go. All right. Shi Sheng was an author who loved cliffhangers and dropped countless books. A stepmother-styled author who killed off countless protagonists. On this beautiful day, she finally understood something. Authors who write cliffhangers will be punished. She was currently squatting in front of a book-shaped crystal, half the height of a person, and suffering from a bit of a headache. She had clearly been debating with her readers about how the male lead was turned gay by one of the side characters, but said side character was straightened out by the female lead. This, of course, led to the male lead being forced to live a lonely life of misery. So, how did she end up here? I want to go back. I have already stated the conditions for returning. You have 5 seconds to consider. If you have not decided by then, you will be terminated. A robot-like, emotionless voice sounded. Shi Sheng. ... As expected of a system, terminate this, terminate that. How cruel, At this moment, a countdown timer was displayed on the crystal screen. 5, 4, 3... Okay. For the sake of survival, Shi Sheng surrendered all her dignity. I want to go back, write cliffhangers with twisted plots Kill off my protagonists. Who told me to be a stepmother author? Being an author, she couldn't be any more familiar with the system genre novels. After all, she had once written... She seemed to have dropped that one. But she was still familiar with the genre. At this moment, the countdown on the screen disappeared to be replaced by a few lines of data. Name, Shi Sheng. Morality points, minus 100,000. Contribution points, 0. Nani? Just these? Where are the wisdom, battle power, and mental strength stats? This doesn't fit with the system genre. Also, why are my morality points at minus 100,000? Looking at that long string of zeros, Shi Sheng got even more of a headache. She had to eliminate this many zeros in order to return? When was she going to get back? I didn't kill people or commit arson. Why is it so far in the negatives? Authors are gods. They grant their characters everything from their life to their personality, as well as create a world. And these worlds will grant heaven-defying luck to those protagonists. However, not every protagonist has the morals and character to use it wisely, the result being the deaths of the side characters, resulting in resentment, which causes the collapse of their worlds. Your job, as the host, is to enter these worlds as a side character and fulfill their wishes in order to clear out their resentment. To put it simply, the protagonists aren't being good protagonists. You still haven't told me why my morality points are at negative 100,000. This was more important since it concerned when she would be able to return. Once the host's morality points have sunk in below negative 200,000, the host will be terminated. Nani? There's a limit. You've got to be kidding me. Initializing transfer. Fuck. Why is this system so abnormal? Fuck. Why is this system so abnormal? Hey, aren't you going to tell me the reward for completing tasks? Don't I get a beginner's package? Aren't you going to give me some guidance? Also, where are my cheats? Shi Sheng only had time to curse before darkness engulfed her vision. Young miss, we have arrived. A delicate female voice sounded from beside Shi Sheng's ear. Shi Sheng's eyes shot open, and she found herself sitting in a car. A woman was standing outside the open door and had bowed down to look at her. At this point, Shi Sheng was very speechless. That damned system didn't even explain anything properly before tossing me into a scenario. Fuck, I'm so giving a bad customer review. Young miss, are you feeling uncomfortable? Seeing that Shi Sheng's expression wasn't quite right, she immediately got a bit anxious. Would you like to rest in the car for a bit? The party won't start for a while yet. And calm down, calm down. I am probably just using somebody else's body right now. The woman's words granted Shi Sheng a chance to go over the plot and the memories of this body. Sorry. I've been reading this story for a long time, and that little BBB always shows up, and I always didn't know what it meant. That's because it's explained in the first chapter. In the first chapter, I didn't bother to click the link, so... Pardon my interruption. This is a live stream. It will be edited later. And... Calm down, calm down. I'm probably just using somebody else's body right now. The woman's words granted Shi Sheng a chance to go over the plot and the memories of this body. The woman closed the door and went back to sit in the passenger's seat. Shi Sheng hurriedly closed her eyes. Shi Sheng hurriedly shut her eyes to receive the plot. Do you want to look at the plot line as well as this body's memories? Yes? No? System's ice-cold robot voice filled her mind, and Shi Sheng took a deep breath before replying in her mind, yes. Transferring plotline. Shisheng's brain felt like it had suddenly been shoved full of pieces of iron, dulled and heavy and aching very badly, as countless pictures flashed in her mind. She gritted her teeth so as not to let out a cry of pain, lest the person sitting in the seat in front notice. The owner of this body was called Xu Chengyue. She was born into a wealthy family who doted on her excessively. She had gotten engaged to Nangong Jing just as she was entered university. The Xu family naturally could not compare to the Nangong family in terms of wealth. That she had even managed to get involved with Nangong Jing at all was due to an agreement between the older generation of their respective families. However, Nangong Jing did not like this new fiancé of his, and so had always given her the cold shoulder. However, Xu Chengyue truly liked Nangong Jing. Despite how she had been rejected so many times, she had never given up. The pride and conservatism typical to a rich family's daughter were all hidden away by her whenever she faced him. She remembered Nangong Jing's every like and dislike, as well as his every sentence. Xu Chengyue thought that her efforts would manage to move Nangong Jing one day. However, even until Su Yiyi showed up, Nangong Jing never liked her back. The cold and aloof Nangong Jing was a warm and considerate person to Su Yiyi. Xu Chengyue was not willing to give up and admit defeat, so she confronted Su Yiyi with her status as Nangong Jing's fiancée and warned her to distance herself from Nangong Jing. Once she knew that Nangong Jing had a fiancé, Su Yiyi began to distance herself from him. Once Nangong Jing found out it was because Su Chengyue had confronted Su Yiyi that she was keeping her distance from him, he wanted to break their engagement. Of course, Xu Chengyue was unwilling to. She cried and put up a huge fuss, yet none of it changed. Nangong Jing's mind about dissolving... She cried and put up a huge fuss, yet none of it changed Nangong Jing's mind about dissolving the engagement. In the meantime, Su Yiyi had been cajoled back to Nangong Jing's side. When faced with Xu Chengyue's accusations, she would always act like she was wronged, like an innocent white flower, and had always expressed that she would leave Nangong Jing. However, even after saying all these, nothing changed. If anything, the two became even more outrageously open with their flirting. Unable to bear it any longer, Xu Chengyue revealed Su Yiyi's existence to Nangong Jing's parents. Su Yiyi's background was only that of a normal household, so his parents, quite predictably, didn't agree to their relationship. Nangong Jing's patience for Xu Chengyue had finally dropped to rock bottom. Her revealing Su Yiyi's existence to his parents was the final straw which caused him to make a move on the Xu family. The Xu family faced utter bankruptcy. Due to Nangong Jing's unspoken warnings, no one dared to lend a helping hand to the Xu family. Some even started throwing stones down the well. Xu Chengyue's parents died in a car accident, leaving Xu Chengyue to clean up the mess that the Xu family had become. Having been a young lady pampered all her life, how would supporting the fallen Xu family on her own be easy? So, Xu Chengyue went to plead Nangong Jing for help. However, she hadn't managed to see Nangong Jing, but met Su Yiyi instead. Due to her grief and heartbreak, Su Chengyue's mind was in a muddled state. This led to her not standing stably and bumping into Su Yiyi, causing her to fall down the stairs. Who knew that Su Yiyi had been pregnant with Nangong Jing's child, and this fall caused her to have a miscarriage? Nangong Jing was so stunned and enraged. This matter caused the last bit of feeling between them to completely vanish. The Xu family completely fell into decline, and Shu Cheng Yue was humiliated to death by the creditors who the Shu family had owed money to. At the moment of her death, Shu Cheng Yue realized that her fate was because she had fallen for Nangang Jin. Had she been more logical and stopped chasing him earlier, then it was clear he wouldn't like her back. The Shu family wouldn't have gone bankrupt, and her parents probably wouldn't have died. She probably also wouldn't have had such a miserable fate. Author's note. About the main character, Shi Sheng is not a good person. She has a grudge against society. If she's not doing well, she'll damn well put others down with her. Not all protagonists are good people. You have been warned. Translator's Corner. Hey, so I decided to pick up this book because of my favorite character of all time, Shi Sheng. Spoiler, she is freaking badass. End spoiler. So this is the first arc on the book, so the plot isn't going to be advancing very quickly. The male lead will be referenced later on, though just by name, so you can skip this arc if you want. The next button is broken. So we're going to go to the content page, and I'll just leave that up for myself. While I'm at it, I should take a brief moment to okay, cool. Stream URL. Yeah, might as well. Take a brief pause while I share this link. That link doesn't work. I'm gonna have to repost that. Oh, shoot, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, your channel, and I am live streaming, aren't I? Stream URL, share? Ah, that must be the correct link. No, curse you. Twitter, always updating when I'm not done doing my thing. Streaming the first arc of side character Transmigration. The final boss is no joke. There we go. Real link this time, and delete the old one so that no one ever knows that I fucked up. Unless they watch me that closely, but absolutely do not believe that people really do that. So, right. Chapter 2. Boop boo. So hard to copy. All right. Sorry for the delay for anyone who happens to be listening. I wanted to share the link to the live stream to a couple of people before I keep going. Anyone listening in from the beginning can just sort of skip a few minutes there. And put my phone on silent so that I don't interrupt the next chapter. Alright, starting off chapter 2. The previous chapter was just an introduction to the hello, transmigration has started, and here's the original story that was supposed to happen. And this is when things actually start, so. In a richly decorated great hall, soothing music was being played. Carefully dressed up people of both genders gathered in their own groups as they chatted. Shi Sheng sat in a corner. Her expression was calm and natural. There was no visible hint of her feelings being out of place. This party was held to celebrate Mrs. Nanggong's birthday. It was also the day when Shu Chengyue had revealed Su Yiyi to Nangongjing's parents. Her wish was to leave Nangongjing, that scumbag, as well as to protect the Shu family, and be filial to her parents to let them enjoy a safe retirement. Really quick. Station Mandarin. I was pretty sure that this was pronounced Shu, but I'm gonna check.
Hey, my name is Shirley Xiaolin Xu, and wait, what did she say? Shirley who? Xu. Today, I'm going to teach you how to pronounce my last name.
Shu.
So, in Chinese, the pronunciation guide comes in two forms: pinyin, which originates from China, and Wei Giles, a westernized version. In pinyin, every sound has 4 tones. So, xu, 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 xu. The last name xu comes in 2 tones. The second, xu, written like this, and the third, xu, which is my last name, so we can forget it.
Okay, so I'm gonna be totally transparent to anybody on this stream. I do not speak Mandarin. So, as far as tones go, I apologize. I am probably not going to get it right, especially seeing as when things are translated, they're put into, what was that called? Pinyin? And Pinyin does not tell you what tone is used unless sometimes there's a translator note. So I'm going to do my best to pronounce things without that. And please forgive me for the slight delay while I just check and make sure I'm pronouncing things right. Because originally I used a quick pronunciation guide for when I was doing quick transmigration with QQ Farm. And it basically just told you when it's typed like this, it's pronounced like this. But then I later found out that that guide was not necessarily correct. So now I'm just, in order to try to fail less, I'm just gonna be Googling things and try to find an actual voice.
Chinjayo.
Chen Jayu.
Chinjayo.
Oh, jeez. I really was pronouncing that one wrong.
Chenjiu.
Chen
Chenjiu.
Ju. So this is not the same name, but Chenjue. I hope that that's right. Because they're all doing Chenju, but not Chenjue. So, Chenjue. And let's try Nangong real quick, so that I'm making sure I'm getting that right, because that name comes up a lot. Nangong. Nangong, okay. Nangong. Okay, so it follows the A, I, U, A, O. Yeah, so I studied Japanese, and I know that the vowels are always, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. So it's always the same A, and ke, ku, A, I, U, A, O. There's not like hard A, soft A. So I have been kind of trying to do that with the Chinese names as well. It seems like it vaguely applies. Nangong. That was right? So Nangong. And then we'll try Jing Mandarin pronunciation.
pronouncenames.com. Jing.
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 The J sounds kind of like CH a little bit. Okay, so Shu Qingyue, Su Yi, Nangong Jing. All right. Thank you for biting or waiting for me. I was going to use a fancy word. I failed at it. Moving on. I should probably check this one too. Just to make sure that, because if X and SH
The following
are the same.
pronunciation is brought to you by pronouncenames.com.
Sheng.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to differentiate when I'm speaking between the X sound and the SH sound. So they're going to sound the same when I do them. I'm uneducated, but I'm trying my best. I want to show respect to the pronunciation to the best of my abilities. And if I fuck up, feel free to correct me. I am always willing to take feedback. So, doing my best, open to feedback, continuing the story with my best efforts. Okay. Shi Sheng sat in a corner. Her expression was calm and natural. There was no visible hint of her feeling out of place. This party was held to celebrate Mrs. Nangong's birthday. It was also the day when Shu Qingyue had revealed Su Yi to Nangong Jing's parents. Her wish was to leave Nangong Jing, that scumbag, as well as to protect the Shu family and be filial to her parents, to let them enjoy a safe retirement. Qingyue, why are you sitting over there? Why isn't young Master Jing with you? A pretty and delicate young girl sat down next to Shi Sheng. She had a long curly hair that reached down to her face and an adorable... I'm going to change that. She had a long curly hair that reached down to her chin and an adorable baby face. her information appeared in Xi Sheng's mind. Lan Shui, someone who was good friends with Xu Chengyue. Of course, that was what she used to think. When the Xu family was in decline and Xu Chengyue had reached out to her for help, Lan Shui not only didn't help, she even mocked Xu Chengyue. That the original Xu Chengyue knew Nangang Jing and Su Yiyi had sparks flying between them in the first place was due to this Lan Shui. Don't know, Xi Sheng answered expressionlessly. Get away from me, you scheming bitch. Pretentious white lotuses can just scram. Lan Shui found her reaction a bit weird, but didn't think too much on it, thinking that she was just a bit unhappy. After all, put in anyone's shoes, seeing their own fiancé be intimate with another woman must be hard to accept. Chengyue, I saw Su Yiyi just now. Lan Shui's voice was full of worry, though it clearly didn't show on her face. Young Master Jing is your fiancé. You can't just let her steal him. Because Nangang Jing's father hadn't stepped down yet, everyone in this social circle called Nangang Jing Young Master Jing. Xi Sheng swept her a gaze. Lan Shui hadn't done much to conceal her true intentions, leading Xi Sheng to wonder, just how blind was Xu Chengyue to think this bitch meant her well? The saying that the IQ of female villains and side characters was in a perpetual offline mode wasn't wrong one bit. How did she get in? Xi Sheng didn't feel like being in open conflict with Lang Shui as of right now, so she just casually asked. Of course she knew how the female lead got in. In every story, other than the male lead, the female lead would always have a loyal and devoted male admirers, who just so happened to have high status as well. And Su Yiyi had entered the party with male admirer number 1, Ling Hao. She came in with the youngest master of the Ling family. That woman seduced young Master Jing, yet also seduced young Master Ling. Who knows whether she learned these who knows where she learned these shamelessly slutty methods? Lang Jui's face was filled with anger. Xi Sheng was about to say something when a magnetic voice sounded from the side. If one listened closely, one would be able to hear a hint of impatience in the tone. What are you doing over there? What are you doing over here? Young Master Jing. Lan Shui immediately stood up, panicking slightly inside. Young Master Jing didn't hear what I said just now, right? Nangang Jing gave Lan Shui a cold and aloof nod. Lan Shui winked at Xi Sheng before escaping elsewhere, leaving the two of them alone. Xi Sheng lifted her head to look at him. As the male protagonist, Nangang Jing's looks and aura could easily outclass normal people. Xi Sheng clicked her tongue in amazement secretly, though her face remained as expressionless as ever. She made no move of getting up. Not feeling well, sat here to rest. It was clearly the same voice as before, yet it wasn't as annoyingly clingy as before. All that was left was an endless calm. Did she eat the wrong medicine? My mom is looking for you. Nangang Jing's remembered what he was looking for her for. In the past, he wouldn't even have to look for her, since she would always tag along with him everywhere. Today, though, she had disappeared from his vicinity, causing him to have to look for her, which pissed him off quite a bit. He had just seen Su Yiyi appear next to Ling Hao, and the two appeared rather close. This caused the anger in his heart to increase, which in turn caused his gaze to sharpen. What are you looking at me like that for? I didn't do anything to bother you today. Xi Sheng was annoyed by Nangang Jing's gaze. What? Just because you're the protagonist, you can date someone else while being engaged? Even if you didn't like your fiancé, you should have dissolved the engagement first before you dating this person you liked. This is called being responsible to both your lover and your fiancé. Don't cause any trouble today, Nangang Jing warned in a low voice. Ha! Ha! Do I look like that kind of person? I'm also very busy, you know. Nongong Jing brought Shisheng to the second floor. On the way, Shisheng was very quiet, not speaking to him or making any advances on him. It was as if she had turned into someone else. Nangong Jing just thought that she was playing hard to get, so he didn't think too deeply, since he had never and would never like her. Shisheng was pondering on how to dissolve the engagement with Nangong Jing, so that when he suddenly stopped, she slammed headfirst into his back, causing her to swagger a few steps. "What is wrong with you?" She swallowed back the words at the end when she saw who was standing in front. Does this count as enemies meeting on a narrow road? Su Yi and Ling Hao are standing right there, and they're holding hands. Su Yi had the normal kind of pretty you could find anywhere. Excuse me, need to dig my kitten out of the trash can. You know you're not supposed to be in the trash can, little rat. Su Yi had the normal kind of pretty you could find anywhere. She wore an exquisitely tailored white evening gown which clung tightly to her slim waist. She wore light makeup. Overall, she appeared very pure and flawless. Seeing Nangong Jin, Su Yi was stunned for a moment, her eyes seeming like a startled deer's. However, upon seeing Shisheng, who was standing next to Nangong Jin, a hint of hurt flashed on her face. Shisheng pursed her lips. With light steps, she walked past Nangong Jin and spoke, "I'll head over to Auntie on my own." "Miss Shu, don't misunderstand." Su Yi's pitiful voice sounded, her face full of helplessness, as if Shisheng had really misunderstood her. Shisheng paused slightly, and just so happened to have stopped in front of Su Yi. She cast a side glance at her. "Miss Su, what am I misunderstanding exactly?" "I never said anything, female lead Sama. Why are you provoking me of your own accord?" Su Yi choked, clearly having been caught off guard by Shisheng's attitude. "Su Cheng Yue, don't go overboard," Nangong Jin berated from behind. "Hey, fuck, man. What did I do? Don't be so goddamn biased." Shisheng took a deep breath. "I'm in a good mood today, so I won't continue arguing with you people. Host, please do not attempt to kill off the male lead." System's icy cold voice extinguished the budding idea in her heart. Shisheng humphed before turning to head off to find Mrs. Nangong. Looking at that departing back, Nangong Jing felt a bit weird. Shisheng Yue is not normal today. "Help me look after her," Nangong Jing looked at Ling Hao. "I don't need you to tell me to take care of my little white rabbit." Ling Hao's provocation caused Nangong Jin's suspicions. Ling Hao's provocation caused Nangong Jin's suspicious thoughts to fly out the window. He glared at Ling Hao before consolingly patting Su Yi on the head. "I'll resolve this quickly, so don't worry." Su Yi bit her lips and nodded. The corridor regained silence. Suddenly, a door was pushed open, from which two tall and burly bodyguards stepped out. They retreated to the sides of the doorway and respectfully waited. A few seconds later, a man emerged from the room. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo, just a white blouse, and the sleeves slightly rolled up, revealing an exquisite designer watch. His posture was languid as he took in the empty corridor, his lips hooked upwards as he lifted his feet to leave. Translator's Corner. Shi Sheng uses Daren, which is like saying Lord in Chinese, but I thought it sounded weird, so I replaced it with Sama, which is what I think sounds more fitting. Also, she herself uses Japanese expressions sometimes, so I think this doesn't sound out of place. Next button link actually works this time. We're blessed. Chapter 3 of the Rich Family's Young Miss arc. Shi Sheng and Mrs. Nangong only came back downstairs together when the party was about to officially begin. Nangong Jing had long left. He was probably more concerned about his Su Yi Yi. Shi Sheng wasn't a big fan of dealing with social niceties, but in this circle, this was quite unfortunately a necessity. Miss Shu is getting prettier every time I see her. Young Master Jing is truly fortunate, unlike those little rascals of ours who haven't even shown any signs of wanting to settle down. A dignified-looking lady said, her face full of envy as she looked at Mrs. Nangong. Her words were immediately joined in by the sounds of agreement from the other ladies. Now we know getting them engaged to a good daughter-in-law early on is a must. That also depends on the person. Look at that one from the Lin family. Weren't they also engaged since they were young? And the result, they're arguing every day and disrupting the peace in their own household. I'm not talking about Miss Shu. Miss Shu, don't take it to heart. Bitch, you tried to be snarky. You think just because you said it subtly no one could hear it? Shi Sheng gave a perfunctory smile, though her eyes were filled with impatience. Had she not already been in the car outside, she wouldn't have bothered coming in. If 3 women are already so bothersome, someone get me out of here before more join in. Auntie, my dad has arrived, so I'll just head over to fetch him. Seeing Shu Chengyue's, now her, father, she immediately took this convenient excuse to escape. These people had everything, money and power. Their only remaining pastime was comparing how well they did with their peers. They would compare their fathers, their husbands, their children. It was as if being slightly superior made them more respectable. Daddy! Shi Sheng walked over to her father and spoke in a warm voice. You came here so early, but why don't I see you with Ah Jing? Her father scanned her surroundings, and upon noticing the distinct lack of Nangong Jing's presence, couldn't help but grow doubts. And he's busy. Shi Sheng's smile turned more honest. Why didn't Mommy come? There was a last-minute emergency at the company, so she went there to resolve it. When did you learn to be so concerned about us? I was beginning to think the only one you cared about was your little fiancé. He joked with a jovial face. It could be seen how much Shu Chengyue was doted on by her father. People grow up. Shi Sheng blinked. Okay. Our little girl has finally grown up. The soul has already been switched out. Of course there's a difference. One of Shu Chengyue's wishes was to be filial to her parents, so that was what Shi Sheng would do. Her father took her to propose a toast to the star of today's party. Reminder, Mrs. Nangong, before bringing her around to introduce her to people. Shu Chengyue's father found his daughter to be exceptionally obedient today, causing him to feel pleased and think inwardly, she really has grown up. Shi Sheng was feeling a bit lightheaded from the wine. Shi Sheng was feeling a bit lightheaded from the wine she drank, so she excused herself and went to the garden to clear her head. The Nangong family's garden was very big. Shisheng found a spot to sit down. Feeling the cool night wind, her mind cleared quite a bit. What were you doing with him just now? A voice containing a hint of rage startled Shisheng from her drowsiness. Rubbing her face, Shisheng turned around and leaned on the back of the bench to see what was going on. There were a few trees there, under which two silhouettes could vaguely be seen. Wasn't that Nangong Jing's voice? Wasn't that voice Nangong Jing's? I didn't... I'd recognize that voice anywhere. It's Su Yi. What are these two up to? I saw it myself. Nangong Jing was clearly on the edge of bursting. Su Yi, I'm working hard for our future, but what do? You go and seduce other men?
Jing, how could you say such things about me?
What? Was I wrong? If I didn't show up, were you two planning on continuing? Shisheng's eyes sparkled with light. What did Nangong Jing catch Su Yi and Ling Hao doing? Were they hugging or kissing? If he's this upset, I'd wager they were kissing. In the original plot, Shu Chengyue constantly bothered Nangong Jing, causing him to have no time to look for Su Yi. At this point in time, Shu Chengyue had already revealed Su Yi to Mrs. Nangong. At the same time, Su Yi and Ling Hao had appeared together, leaving plenty of time for them to have done something. Just as Shisheng was recalling the plotline, those two actually started kissing. What the hell happened? What did they say just now? I didn't hear properly. Can I request a replay? The sounds of frantic kissing could be heard in the quiet garden. Shisheng rubbed her chin. These two aren't planning to just start fucking here, are they? Fortunately, Nangong Jing still had some semblance of reason left. He took Su Yi to get a room first. If she went in to catch them in bed together, she'd definitely manage to dissolve the engagement. Heaven is helping me. Shisheng immediately jumped up from the bench. Ah! She cried out as she fell back in her seat. Seeing the person in front of her clearly, she patted her chest. The hell is wrong with you, just appearing without warning? Were you planning on scaring me to death? That person gave a light laugh and spoke in a clear and enthralling voice. You're not upset? Isn't he your fiancé? This person was wearing a white blouse and black trousers. One of his hands was in his pants pockets, and his posture was very languid. What little light there was faintly outlined his handsome features, making him seem almost otherworldly. Those eyes gazed fixedly at her, as if their owner had discovered some precious treasure. His lips curved up in a slight smile. Shisheng's first impression wasn't his good looks. No, it was the aura of concealed malice radiating off of him. He had very enchanting features, yet emanating from his person was a darkness that threatened to seduce one into an inescapable abyss. This man is very dangerous, was Shisheng's first thought. She discreetly took back her pointed examination. And you are? I don't remember this person showing up in the original story. Conditions for the hidden quest have been achieved. Quest has been accepted due to silence on the host's part. The hell? The fuck is a hidden quest? And the fuck do you mean by accepted due to silence? System, are you going to force me to accept? It's illegal, you know. Hidden quest. Become Chu Tang's true love. Chu Tang? This guy is Chu Tang? Are you fucking kidding me? In the original storyline, Chu Tang never showed up in person. I think it's Chu Tong. Let me check that name. Tong. Chinese pronunciation.
Tong.
I was right. It's Tong. Okay. Gotta remember ah, not ah. really keep slipping because I'll get into it though. In the original storyline, Chu Tong never showed up in person, but his name was mentioned. He was a legend in the business world. And one of the companies under this Chu Tong suppressed Nangang Jin for a period of time, although it wasn't for very long. That suppression caused the Nangang family some damages. Even till the end, Nangang Jin never found out who was behind it. She only knew it was this guy because she had the full version of the story. The hell does becoming his true love mean? What have I to make this business genius love me? What I have? What I have? What do I have to make this business genius love me? Stop joking. I think it's supposed to be why. Why do I have? Yeah. Because she's definitely too arrogant to say, what do I have to attract this man? Shisheng knows she is the best. So I'm pretty sure it's just a typo. I'll just fix it. The hell does becoming his true love mean? Why do I have to make this business genius love me? Stop joking. Affirmative. If the hidden quest is failed, the host shall be terminated. Your grandpa! You never said I'd have to deal with romance. The system played dead. It had pretty much told her everything it needed to anyways. Meanwhile, Chu Tong was watching it with interest as the girl who was sitting on the bench changed expressions from shock to anger to depression. I haven't even replied. Why is her expression changing so much? I'm going to catch them in bed together. You coming? Shisheng stood up from the bench and invited Chu Tong to catch adultery. Chu Tong raised an eyebrow. Do you know who I am? The bodyguards hidden in the darkness were so shocked their jaws almost dropped. There's actually someone who dares to invite the young master to go and catch adultery? Respect! Shisheng was dazed for a bit. Oh yeah, he hasn't introduced himself yet. I'm not supposed to know who he is. Hence, she shook her head very seriously before speaking in a very sincere tone. I need someone else to be a witness. Okay. The bodyguards were once again stunned. The young master actually agreed? He agreed? Agreed! It's so important it has to be said 3 times. Translator's Corner. Nothing like catching your soon-to-be ex-fiancé in bed with another woman together to say I'm single, right? Rich Family's Young Miss, Chapter 4. I'm going to add quick tweets so I can have a personal reference for how long it takes me to get through each chapter. It'll be slightly less than that once I actually go through the editing and cut out all of my off-topic rambling and figuring out how to pronounce things, but, you know, just as a basic progress check. Xu Chengyue was familiar with the layout of the Nanggong's family's mansion, so Shisheng was able to lead Chu Tong to Nangang Jing's room, which was located on the 3rd floor, fairly easily. Chengyue, Lan Shui, who just so happened to descend from the 3rd floor, was surprised at Chu Tong's presence. This guy is hot. Like, hotter than Nangang Jing hot. Why didn't I see a guy this hot at the party just now? Seeing Lan Shui entranced by his hotness, Chu Tong gave a wicked smile. A smile that could seduce one to fall further into damnation. Since Shisheng was standing in front of Chu Tong and facing away from him, she naturally didn't notice his smile. If she did, she'd start yelling, "Pervert." I can't find Nangang Jing, so I'm planning to go look for him. You in? The more people to go, the more witnesses there'll be. With such a handsome man like Chu Tong here, Lan Shui naturally agreed without hesitation. Hi. I'm called Lan Shui. If Shisheng didn't notice Lan Shui's intentions by now, she'd be a blubbering idiot. Her back stiffened. That person behind me is a big pervert, Lan Shui. You are one brave girl. If Chu Tong knew what Shisheng had labeled him in her mind, he'd definitely cry out in injustice. I didn't do anything. Why am I a big pervert now? Ignoring the people behind her, Shisheng hurriedly closed in on Nonggong Jing's room. Standing at the doorway for a moment, she didn't knock, instead simply pushing the door open. Fortunately, for her purpose at least, Nonggong Jing forgot to lock it. Jing, Shisheng's voice halted abruptly. Strange moaning noises poured out through the open doorway, though they stopped quickly once Shisheng's presence had been noticed, and the room fell dead silent. Lan Shui had been planning to continue hitting on Chu Tong, though upon hearing the noises she stopped and looked through the doorway and saw the scene inside clearly. Nonggong Jing was frozen on top of Su Yi. It was quite clear he hadn't expected anyone to barge in just as he was doing the deed. A few seconds later, Su Yi finally reacted as she shrieked while pushing Nonggong Jing off of her. Who allowed you to come in? Did no one teach you to knock the door first? Did no one teach you to knock on the door first? Nonggong Jing covered Su Yi in a blanket before glaring at Shisheng in anger. Shisheng's hand slowly released the doorknob as she released all those feelings she had been brewing. Others could only see a girl who had caught her fiancé cheating on her, utterly heartbroken and depressed. I'll be waiting outside. Shisheng shut the door. Lan Shui, can you help me get my dad, as well as auntie and uncle? Lan Shui woodenly nodded before jogging downstairs. Chu Tong leaned against the wall with a teasing smile on his lips, clearly just here to watch the ensuing drama. In a moment, I'll be troubling you to act as a witness for me. Shisheng looked at Chu Tong. Chu Tong raised his chin, indicating he had agreed. By the time Lan Shui had brought everyone, 5 to 6 minutes had already passed. The first thing they saw was the man leaning in against a wall. By the time Lan Shui had brought everyone, 5 to 6 minutes had already passed. The first thing that they saw was the man leaning against a wall, as well as the girl radiating a depressed aura at the doorway. Daddy. Seeing her father, Shisheng immediately started utilizing her acting skills, pouncing into his arms. President Chu, what are you, the respectful version, what are you doing here? Nonggong Zhen, I need to make sure. I feel like it's Jen, but let's try. Jen?
Positive.
Oh.
Zheng.
Zheng. Okay. From how Nonggong Zheng respectfully addressed someone from his son's generation, it could be seen how much of a threatening figure Chu Tong was. Though Lan Shui hadn't explicitly told them the reason for calling them all here, everyone here was experienced in these matters and immediately guessed it from her words and tone. Seeing Shi Sheng like this only served to confirm their guesses. The main question in Nangang Zheng's mind was, what is Chu Tong doing here? Chu Tong didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Shi Sheng. Nangang Zheng could only nervously Zheng. Zheng. But I don't know if it's the same tone, though. Mandarin.
Ni hao, I'm John. Hi, I'm Carsey. We're the two Chinese characters. Go teach Chinese. I am Chinese. Today, we're going to teach you how to pronounce the name of the rising star of Chinese tennis, Zheng Jie. Zheng Jie has it really tough. She sure does. The tennis circuit is long and grueling.
So it's Zheng.
Surely, if Zheng Jie can break Serena Williams...
Okay. Never would have guessed it's pronounced that way. All right. Chu Tong didn't answer. Tong. I need to make sure I'm pronouncing Tong and not tongue. Okay. Chu Tong didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Shi Sheng. Nangang Zheng, shoot. 2 seconds and I forget how to pronounce it. I did take my ADD meds today.
Williams serve, then we can break the Western world of its Chinese mispronunciation. Zheng Jie is a great name.
Zheng. Okay. Zheng. Nangang Zheng could only nervously shift his gaze to Shi Sheng, who was currently sobbing her eyes out. Cheng Yue, what happened? Although Mrs. Nangang had already guessed what had roughly happened, she was still hopeful that she was wrong. Baby girl, don't cry. Tell Daddy what's wrong, okay? Her father comforted Shi Sheng, his expression full of heartache. Shi Sheng lifted a trembling finger to point at the tightly closed door as she choked. Jing, he has someone else. They... As if she couldn't continue any longer, she didn't finish her words, and all that was left were suppressed sobs. At this moment, the tightly closed door swung open. Upon seeing her son and an unfamiliar girl, Mrs. Nanggang's last bit of hope is extinguished. Seeing that there were so many people outside, Su Yiyi hid behind Nangang Jing timidly, her face red enough to drip blood. Her father's face got even darker, like clouds before a storm. I expect an explanation for this. After all, if the male side already started cheating while they were engaged, how much worse would it be once they were actually married? Xu Chengyue's father loved her very much. Never once in his life had he cheated on her. Xu Chengyue's father loved her mother very much. Never once in his life had he cheated on her. Even when he was forced to interact with other women due to his work, he did his best to keep things professional and would never allow anyone the chance to make him cheat on his wife. As a result, he very naturally wished for his daughter to marry a man like him. Nangang Jing, who is she? As he was unclear about Chu Tong and Shi Sheng's exact relationship, Nangang Jun... Am I pronouncing this right?
For practicing tongue volleys. Tongue volleys? What on earth? Zheng Jie is a great name for
Okay. Sorry. I just really... It's not coming naturally, so I have to keep checking. As he was unclear about Chu Tong and Shi Sheng's exact relationship, Nangang Zheng decided to play it safe and yelled at his son. Nengong Jing drew Su Yiyi into his arms tightly and spoke solemnly as if he were making a vow. The one I like is Yiyi. I won't marry any other woman besides Yiyi. You stinking brat! Have you drunk yourself stupid? Mrs. Nangong stepped up this time. Nengong Jing interrupted Mrs. Nangong. Mom, if I can't even choose the person who I want to be with for the rest of my life, then what's the point in living?
Jing,
Su Yi tugged on Nangong Jing's hand while shaking her head frantically. She practically had "pity me" written on her face. Don't worry, I'll definitely take responsibility for you. Nangong Jing hugged Su Yi even tighter. Her father remained silent with a stoic face. In this matter, he would listen to his daughter's opinion, but he had already pulled Nangong Jing into his blacklist. Shi Sheng lifted her head and took in everything. She spoke with difficulty. Dad, Uncle, Auntie, since Ajing already has someone he likes, then let's just break off the engagement. It's better for everyone. Apart from Chu Tong, who was playing the role of a good audience, everyone else was stunned by this turn of events. The Shu Sheng Yue they knew was head over heels for Nangong Jing, so how could she say this so decisively? Nangong Jing, on the other hand, was surprised because Shu Sheng Yue had mentioned breaking off the engagement before he got around to it. Mrs. Nangong had finally reacted, as she immediately consoled Shi Sheng. Sheng Yue, don't talk nonsense. Auntie will make sure this little brat won't let you down. Auntie, a forcefully picked melon is not sweet. Since I'm not the one Ajing likes, the one who'll suffer in the end is me. All these years, I thought I could move him with my sincerity, but the truth proved me wrong. No matter how hard a person's heart is, if a few years isn't enough to move it, then it can only mean he will never like me. Shu Cheng Yue had liked Nangong Jing ever since they got engaged. However, Nangong Jing had never been nice to her. The way he treated her was like how one would treat a pet they could order around as they liked. Most of her youth was wasted on this asshole of fiancé. Such a pity. Girlie, you... Her father was also caught by surprise. Is she being serious? Or is it just because she's angry? If she's being serious, I'd cheer. After all, my daughter is both beautiful and has qualifications. What kind of man wouldn't want her? Dad, I've thought it through, Shi Sheng paused, revealing exhaustion on her face. I've been thinking it through ever since I first saw them together, and I'm tired. Cheng Yue, this brat just had a moment of folly. Don't say these things until you've calmed down. Mrs. Nangong really liked this future daughter-in-law of hers. Though her family background wasn't as good as theirs, she excelled in all other areas. Of course, the most important point being that since her family background was slightly inferior, she would be easier to control. Translator's Corner. Wow, apparently you should knock before barging in on your fiancé burying another girl. Boop. Rich Family's Young Miss. Chapter 5. I'm just going to be saying the arc name instead of side character transmigration. The final boss is no joke because that's too long. So. There were still traces of tears on Shi Sheng's face. All right, kitten. You can play over there. There were still traces of tears on Shi Sheng's face Her eyes reddened from crying, her eyes reddened from crying as she bit on her lip, as if to act strong. Overall, she made for a very pitiful-looking appearance. Auntie, thank you for all these years of looking out for me. We're both women, so you should understand how I feel. This sentence aimed directly at the sore spot of Mrs. Nangang. Nangang Zhang... I've already forgotten how to pronounce this name again.
Zhengjie is a great name for practicing tongue vowelization. Zhengjie is a...
Zheng. Sorry, my memory's so bad, guys. Zheng. How many chapters are there in this arc? 20. Okay. This sentence aimed directly at the sore spot of Mrs. Nangang. Nangang Zheng wasn't as monogamous as Xu Shengyue's father. He kept many mistresses. Since Nangang Zheng had always been sensible enough to not let any of them get pregnant or make trouble for her, she just pretended like they didn't exist. Such was the existence of the modern bourgeoisie. Hence, it was understandable that Mrs. Nangang's heart softened upon seeing such a young and likable young lady about to follow in her own footsteps. She moved her lips, but in the end was unable to say anything. Have you thought it through clearly? Her father again asked her seriously. Shi Sheng nodded. I've thought it through. She looked at Nangang Jing. That was a face that was clearly heavy with despair, yet when Nangang Jing met those eyes, he saw only indifference. Even if there were still some tears left in the corner of her eyes, in their depths, it was an eerie stillness. Nangang Jing felt that there was something wrong, as if she shouldn't be acting like this. Though upon thinking that he could finally get rid of the engagement, he suppressed that feeling of wrongness and coolly met Shi Sheng's gaze. Cheng Yue, this isn't a small matter. It concerns the interests of both our families. Will you please reconsider? What was going through Nangang Jing's mind was, if father knows that I let these two dissolve the engagement, he's going to scold me to death. As it just so happened, Nangang Jing was the most afraid of his father, and hence the one who least wanted their engagement broken. No matter whether it was considering the interests of their two families or from a private angle, dissolving the engagement was not a smart move. If it hadn't been for this brat, he actually dared to cheat on his fiancée in his own home. Too reckless. Needs more guidance. Mr. Nangang, Chu Tong spoke suddenly, scaring the living daylights out of Nangang Jing, who had hurriedly turned to look respectfully at Chu Tong. Chu Tong's lips curved. I believe the lady has made herself quite clear. I hope Mr. Nangang will not delay her in her pursuit for happiness. Nangang Jing glanced at Shi Sheng, who had her head lowered out of the corner of his eye. She could actually get Chu Tong to speak out for her. I understand. Chu Tong was a man who could make a person go broke just because of a disagreement. He didn't dare to offend him. Aside from Shi Sheng and Nangang Jing, it was probably that no one else here knew about Chu Tong's real identity, hence seeing Nangang Jing so servile to him inevitably made everyone else extremely curious, though if Okay, there we go. Dissolving the engagement would require calling for a press conference, so Nongong Jun had the matter temporarily delayed for 3 days. 3 days was enough time for anyone who was going to change their mind to do so. Chu Tong had given Shisheng a name card before he left. It was black with silver patterning, giving it a look of subtle yet luxurious. That's phrased weirdly. Chu Tong had given Shisheng a name card before he left. It was black with silver patterning, giving it a look of subtle luxury. On it was only his name as well as a string of numbers, clearly a private mobile number. Ever since Shisheng had got in the car, her father had been looking at it curiously. In the end, he couldn't resist his curiosity and asked, "Girl, that man was..." To be able to make Nongong Jung so respectful, he couldn't think of anyone right off the bat. Chu Tong. Shisheng showed the name card to her father. Those 2 words were written in bold on the name card, so they were exceptionally clear. His mind filtered through all the Chu Tongs he knew of before recalling a certain legend of the business world that had once revealed a blurry profile shot of his face on the cover of a financial magazine. Chu Tong... Is it the one I'm thinking of? Having guessed what was going through his mind, Shisheng nodded. Yes, it's the one you're thinking of. That Chu Tong. Completely ignoring her father, whose inner thoughts must have been a maelstrom of chaos by now, she calmly entered the string of numbers into her phone. At least that pervert didn't have too bad of an impression of me. This task shouldn't be too hard. Only when they reached home did her father just manage to pull himself out of his stupor. Girl, you didn't dissolve the engagement with that Nongong brat for him, right? It was quite apparent her father had quite a refreshing train of thought. Shisheng's lips twitched. Are you really my dad? Seeing that Shisheng's expression wasn't quite right, her father thought he had said something wrong. Don't be upset. It's the Nongong brat that's missing out. Chu Tong's a good man. Let's take him down. Dad, you're awesome. If Chu Tong were that easy to take down, all the women in this world should just kill themselves by smashing their heads with tofu. Shisheng shook her head, choosing to ignore this father, who had a strange train of thought. Now that she had dissolved the engagement, she had completed task number 1, to leave that asshole. Though, if I get the chance to step on him a few times, I will gladly offer up my services. Without Xu Chengyue serving as the catalyst for the relationship between Nangong Jin and Su Yiyi, would their relationship still be as resilient? I look forward to testing this. It sounds a bit repetitive. I think I'll edit it. Without Xu Chengyue serving as the catalyst for the relationship between Nangong Jing and Su Yiyi, would their love still be as resilient? I look forward to testing this. Hey, wait for Dad. Come on and tell me, how did you get to know Chu Tong? He actually gave you his private number? Does he like you? Work harder to chase him down, make that Nangong brat regret to death. Hashtag, my dad is weird, please help, urgent, and waiting for an answer online. Hashtag, future son-in-law caught cheating on daughter, encourages daughter to find another man to bitch slap him. 3 days later, the press conference was held. Back when the engagement was announced, it was pretty big news. Xu Chengyue and Nonggong Jing were touted as the model couple for this circle, childhood sweethearts, a match made in heaven. As a result, the dissolution of the engagement garnered attention from everywhere. It wasn't explained clearly in the press conference why the engagement was called off, leading to endless speculation by the public. As of right now, one of the parties directly involved with the whole fiasco was sitting in a high-end restaurant, staring at a certain pervert sitting across from her. All she did was send a message without too much hope of getting a reply, but she got one. Not only did he reply, he even agreed to have dinner with her, nearly scaring the crap out of her. Xisheng tugged on her lips in a forced smile. Has Mr. Chu stared enough? If you weren't the man I was trying to date, I'd have started launching punches about now. They had already been here for nearly half an hour, and the entire time Chu Tong had just been staring at her like that, causing her scalp to tingle and her body to stiffen. Miss Xu was quite bold. Right after dissolving an engagement with someone else, you invite me out on a date? You aren't afraid the reporters will write any incriminating articles? Chu Tong's wicked gaze swept over her face with bold abandon. In it were hints of teasing and playfulness. Xisheng held down her right hand with her left, while her inner monologue went something like, "Resist! You can't hit him! He's your future boyfriend!" Xisheng maintained a stoic face. "I'm just attempting to repay Mr. Chu's help in speaking out that day." "But why do I feel like..." Chu Tong paused before raising his voice. "You want to hit me?" "Oh, and why on earth would I want to hit you? Trust me, I want to date you." Mr. Chu really knows how to crack a joke. Xisheng gave a stiffened smile before forcefully changing the subject. "Are you hungry? Why don't we eat first?" Sitting here for half an hour, she had noticed the waiters next door looking at them funnily a few times. Most importantly, she hadn't eaten much earlier during lunch. It was already 7 p.m., and she was starving. "I'm not hungry." Table flipping emoji. "Are you even a gentleman? Can't you see I'm starving here?" Chu Tong continued. "I ate afternoon tea before I came out." "What the fuck? You ate before coming out on a date with me? Simply inhuman." Seeing the person who was sitting across from him grinding her teeth, Chu Tong felt an inexplicable amusement in his eyes Chu Tong felt an inexplicable amusement as his eyes curved into crescents and the wickedness that seemed to linger around him retracted. The Chu Tong, as of now, appeared to be an angel fallen onto earth. Xisheng got the shivers when this thought popped up and resolved to eat something to suppress it. Translator's Corner. Now we know where Nonggong Jing gets his cheating genes from. Just in case some people are wondering, the bourgeoisie were a class of nobility. I think the word originates from French. Starting chapter 6. Chu Tong did not speak at all while they were dining. With his noble posture and elegant movements, he made the simple action of eating into a form of art. Having such a fine specimen in front of her, Xisheng's appetite improved considerably, and she ate till she was quite full. Chu Tong couldn't help but smile at Xisheng rubbing her tummy. "I'm very curious. Did President Shu mistreat Miss Shu? Shisheng paused. Is he trying to say I ate a lot? With Mr. Chu here, my appetite couldn't help but increase, Shisheng replied with a faint smile. Chu Tong was stunned for a moment. Was I just flirted with? 2 hours ago, this girl had seemed like she wanted to kill and eat him, but now she actually flirted with him. How bold. Shisheng did grow bolder after she had her fill. Oh wait, that wasn't right. She was always this bold. It was just that she hadn't been accustomed to interacting with Chu Tong yet. Just like how, when you mixed a hot drink and a cold drink, the temperature would take a while to even out. Is Mr. Chu free tonight? What does Miss Shu plan on inviting... What? Does Miss Shu plan on inviting me out? Chu Tong chuckled lowly. Chu Tong chuckled lowly. It costs a lot to invite me. Are you sure you can afford it, Miss Shu? If I can't, I'll just pay off the remainder with my body. I've long since maxed out my skill at flirting with guys, sucker. That won't be necessary. I'll just give Miss Shu a discount. 1 million. Chu Tong's finger tapped on the surface of the table. His body language was pretty much saying, pay money, and I'm all yours tonight. The two sank into silence for a few seconds before Shisheng asked unsurely, You'll really accept the money? Chu Tong nodded, very conservatively. Shisheng was speechless. Ha! Guards, drag this pervert away. Shisheng thought for a moment, before taking out the checkbook her father had given her and writing out 10 million on it. She slapped it down in front of Chu Tong before declaring very boldly, I'm buying you for 10 days. Chu Tong's long and elegant fingers lifted the check. Seeing the sum written on it, a hint of wickedness flashed across the depths of his eyes. Miss Shu spent such an extravagant sum on me. Of course, I wouldn't refuse. Chu Tong placed the check in his pocket before getting up and very gentlemanly extending a hand to Shisheng to help her up. Miss Shu, for the next 10 days I am yours to order. Eating, drinking, or sleeping, I have no objections. Shisheng's lips twitched. For some reason, she felt like she would be spending a lot of money in the near future. I actually bought Chu Tong for 10 days. Feels quite thrilling, actually. Shisheng placed her hand in Chu Tong's. His hand was cool yet dry, and her hand seemed to fit perfectly. The two started heading for the door, but just before they stepped out, were stopped. Sir, you haven't footed the bill yet? The waiter's tone was pleasant, though his gaze was a bit doubtful. These two don't seem like they're unable to pay up. Why didn't they? They must have just forgotten, the waiter tried to convince himself. Well, these were quite a good-looking pair. It was natural that people would try to find excuses for them. Shisheng tightened her grip on Chu Tong's hand. How embarrassing. Chu Tong acted like it had nothing to do with him as his gaze turned and landed on Shisheng. Surrendering, she took out her card and handed it over to the waiter. Sorry, we forgot. The waiter was quite happy. I knew they just forgot. Such good-looking people. How would they be unable to pay up? Once they were outside, Shisheng pushed Chu Tong away. Pointing her finger at him, she heaved, though in the end didn't say anything. This bastard definitely didn't remind me to pay up on purpose. Seeing as I still want to date you, I won't argue with you. You had better not let me catch your weak spot. The two stood at the entrance, Shisheng looking at Chu Tong while he looked back at her. This seemed to the casual onlooker to be a very romantic moment. Romantic my arse. Mr. Chu, where's your car? You want to get watched by others? Since Miss Shu has bought me over, I let the driver return. Chu Tong spoke as if it was to be expected. Shisheng was once again rendered speechless. What, so we have to walk now? She had been driven here by her father's driver, so she didn't have a car here. Why is this business legend adapting so easily to being kept, Director, I think you gave me the wrong script. Shisheng didn't have any notes on her. Chu Tong would almost definitely not have brought any physical money with him, so he couldn't be counted on. You couldn't pay the taxi by card, and there wasn't an ATM anywhere nearby. Shisheng simply wanted to laugh in Chu Tong's face right now. Mr. Chu, can you please recall your driver? Nope. Chu Tong stuck his hands in his pockets. Though if Miss Shu agrees to pay a salary, I would be willing to. Now I know why you're so rich. Money-grubbing profiteer. Shisheng secretly swallowed back a mouthful of blood. She decided to bring Chu Tong to take the public transportation. She decided to bring Chu Tong to take public transport. Let him experience the tough life of a normal person. What about the fare money? Oh, I was planning to just use my good looks. As reality proved, good looks were useful. The one driving the bus was a young fellow who was convinced quite thoroughly by Shisheng until his head was too muddled to mind them heading to the back of the bus. Though there weren't many people on the bus, all the seats were occupied. Just as Shisheng steadied herself, she saw a girl's face redden as she got up and gave her seat to Chu Tong, who sat down without blinking an eye. It was a very ordinary bus seat, but the way he sat made one think he was sitting on the sitting on the seat of a luxury car, which made the surrounding females gasp. What the flying fuck? Where's your shame? She is a girl. A girl. How did you manage to sit there with peace of mind? Isn't anyone going to stop him? Shisheng scanned the surroundings. She saw young ladies everywhere who were looking with frustration and anger. However, this frustration and anger was directed at themselves for not having given up their seat first. What a superficial society we live in. Later on, as more people boarded, the once relatively spacious bus had become more crowded. A few of the bolder young ladies got closer to Chu Tong, having been attracted by his handsomeness. They attempted to attract his attention, though there were some who even straight out asked for his Weixin number, his phone number, and all kinds of numbers. Chu Tong's face slowly turned from calm and collected to slightly heavy and annoyed. Seeing this made Shisheng much happier. Got in over your head, did you? A friendly reminder to the host, Chu Tong is your target. Just as Shisheng was laughing up a storm inwardly, she was woken up by an icy cold voice. She rubbed her face before squeezing these ladies aside and standing directly in front of Chu Tong, blocking off their hungry gazes. Hey, don't you understand the rule of first come, first serve? Go line up at the back. Stop blocking the eye candy. Someone immediately expressed their dissatisfaction and reached out in an attempt to pull Shisheng. Let go. Shisheng looked at the woman pulling her, her gaze slightly cold and sharp, causing the lady to subconsciously release her. Satisfied, Shisheng straightened out her crumpled clothing. Her voice was neither loud nor soft. It was just enough for the surrounding ladies to hear. This man is mine. You can look all you want, but no touching. Got it? Those who took the bus didn't usually have too much money. However, Shisheng was dressed from head to toe in head to toe in named brands, and although they didn't recognize the brands the man was wearing, his clothing didn't look cheap either. Adding on his sinful handsomeness and how he was practically radiating high class, he definitely looked the part of a rich young master. All of that made these ladies behave themselves a bit more, though it was only in their actions. Their gazes were as ferocious as ever. If eyes could fuck someone, Chu Tong would have definitely been fucked countless times. If eyes could fuck someone, Chu Tong would have definitely been fucked countless times. Although Shi Sheng's back was facing Chu Tong, resulting in her not being able to see his face, she got the impression that he was feeling quite happy. Shi Sheng lowered her head as she rolled her eyes. Why is courting someone so hard? Translator's Corner. I would like to know the answer to that last question, too. Oh, probably the question of his sizes. Awkward, thirsty translator. Chapter 7. Tweet. Chapter 7 of A Rich Family's Young Miss, Arc. This was the first time in his life that Chu Tong was sitting on a bus, so it was understandable that by the time they got off, he was extremely uncomfortable, though he didn't show it. Chu Tong forced himself to keep up his image. Though Shi Sheng didn't mock him, she wasn't feeling any pity. Serves you right for sending your driver home and wanting to charge me to call him back. Why don't you just go and live with your money if you love it so much? Shi Sheng brought Chu Tong for a walk around the park before heading home. By this point, even the system couldn't continue looking at their interactions any longer. It was beginning to think that if they started fighting, it wouldn't feel in the least bit surprised. System could pretty much envision the failure of this hidden quest already. Even when Shi Sheng was close to reaching her house, Chu Tong showed no signs of leaving, so she couldn't help but speak. Mr. Chu, aren't you heading back? Chu Tong stuck his hands in his pockets as he continued heading for the mansion district. I currently belong to Miss Shu. Naturally, I'm going back home with Miss Shu. Going back home? Shi Sheng's lips twitched. This fellow has a hole in his brain, doesn't he? Regardless of whether or not Chu Tong's brain really had a hole in it or not, he followed her back home. Her father hadn't slept yet, and was instead watching a TV program on family ethics. Hence, he caught Shi Sheng coming in with an unfamiliar man. After a brief moment of being stunned, he leapt up from his seat before yelling, "Girl! You brought a man home!" Only when he had finished yelling this out did he see Chu Tong's face clearly. Hey, isn't this that guy from the other day? That's right, it's Chu Tong. His eyes lit up and he got all excited to the point of not knowing what to do. Mr. Chu? Chu Tong gave a slight smile. I'll be imposing on President Shu. It's no trouble at all. Mr. Chu saw fit to enter my humble abode is an honor. Please sit down. Girl, what are you waiting for? Go make some tea. Shi Sheng was utterly speechless. You were just yelling at me for bringing a man home just now. How could you change your tone so quickly? Are you really my dad? By the time Shi Sheng had finished making tea, her father and Chu Tong were engaged in conversation. And by the time she had changed clothes, her father had stopped calling him Mr. Chu and instead taken to calling him Xiao Chu. The strangest thing was that Xiao Chu, Chu Tong, answered to it. He freaking answered! Just what the hell happened while I was changing? Their relationship practically escalated into a whole new level. Since it was getting fairly late, it wouldn't be proper to continue conversing with Chu Tong for too long. Hence, Shisheng's father got her to prepare a room for him, going so far as to supervise her personally. It was as if he wished with every fiber of his being to shove her into his arms. Dude, even if he's extremely powerful and all that, you don't have to sell your daughter for benefits, right? You go, girl. Dad's cheering for you, he said to her while making a cheering gesture. Shisheng. ... Hashtag never going to understand how my dad's brain works. Shisheng entered the guest room with Chu Tong. If my dad said anything offensive, don't take it to heart. I apologize if he has. Though she had no idea what they were talking about, she kept having this sneaking suspicion it couldn't be anything good. Miss Shu is worrying too much. Chu Tong unbuttoned his blouse while asking with a straight face. Since Miss Shu is not left yet, I presume you wish to request my services on the bed? To hell with that! Shisheng retreated from the room before slamming the door shut. Chu Tong's lips curved upwards. His long and elegant fingers continued unbuttoning his blouse, revealing his finely chiseled chest. Girl! Come here, girl! Her father was hidden behind a corner nearby. Seeing Shisheng come out, he hastily gestured to her. Why are you acting like a thief in your own home is beyond me. Shisheng went over to him. Dad, why haven't you gone to bed yet? Hi-yo! How can I sleep before I asked you what your relationship with Chu Tong is? Her father was as excited as if he had just run a 5-kilometer marathon. After all, who was Chu Tong? A business legend, that's who. He rarely accepted the invitations of even the press, let alone an invitation to someone else's house. And now Chu Tong was sleeping in his own home. Just thinking about it made him excited. Shisheng went silent for a moment before speaking very honestly. The relationship between the keeper and the kept. She had spent 10 million after all. It wasn't a small sum, so she would have to report it to her father sooner or later. Her father was so shocked his jaw dropped. Only after a good while did he regain his voice. This time there was even more excitement than before. Xiao Chu is keeping you as his mistress? Hey, Dad, is this the kind of attitude you should be having? I'm the one keeping him. Shisheng waved her hand listlessly. Go and sleep first, Dad. It's complicated, and I'll explain it to you when I have the time. Don't worry, I'll definitely chase him down. She didn't forget to reassure her father, just in case he wouldn't release her otherwise, taking advantage of the fact that he hadn't completely processed the fact... Taking advantage of the fact that he hadn't completely processed that Chu Tong was the one being kept, Shisheng very wisely escaped back to her room. And the result was, Shisheng found a check that had been shoved under her door the following morning. Having a father who spends loads of money without blinking an eye was truly a fascinating experience for her. Just as Shisheng was looking at the check in a daze, the door to the room opposite hers opened, revealing the neatly dressed Chu Tong. Seeing the check in her hand, he raised an eyebrow. Is Miss Shu planning on extending the duration of the contract? Can it even be used that way? Seeing the figure on the check, Chu Tong picked it up between his middle and index fingers. Since Miss Shu is so enthusiastic about keeping me, then I shan't disappoint you. I'll be taking this check. The duration has increased to 1 month. Who said I wanted to extend the contract? I'm hungry. Chu Tong hurriedly shoved the check into his pocket. Shisheng was rendered speechless for the umpteenth time. I've seen plenty of guys playing gangster, but never to such but never such an excellent specimen of a man just begging to be kept. Shisheng mentally calculated her chances of snatching the check back, though in the end she gave up. It's not that bad, I guess. This way I've got a longer period of time to get him to like me. They descended the stairs, Chu Tong in front and Shisheng following behind him. Her father was already sitting at the dining table, and upon seeing them come down, his gaze wandered suggestively between the two. "Good morning, Dad." Shisheng sat down. Chu Tong remained standing beside her and looking at her. Shisheng could only twitch her lip as she got up to give him her seat. "The hell? I just brought a little ancestor home. Hey, system, are you sure this fellow can be brought down?" "As long as the host is sincere. If you do not give any sincerity, others will not either." System wasn't stingy when replying to questions it deemed necessary to answer. "Forget it. Where am I going to get that much sincerity? What if this kind of quest turns up again? If I fall in love with every single one of them, I needn't return anymore because I would have suffered from a mental collapse by then." "Then please at least try to fake it." "Fake your head." Shisheng ground her teeth. "Fine, I'll do it. I'll just take it as if I'm practicing my acting skills. Who knows? Maybe by the time I get back, I can become an actress." Chu Tong was rather satisfied by Shisheng's actions. He grabbed the milk she was holding before courteously nodding to her father and greeting him. "Good morning, President Shu." "Good morning to you. I remember I still had matters to take care of at the company. Girl, be a good host to Xiao Chu while I'm gone." He got up and left, though he didn't forget to give her an encouraging look before doing so. Once he had left, Shisheng and Chu Tong were left staring at... Once he had left, Shisheng and Chu Tong were staring... Just sounds repetitive. Once he was gone, Shisheng and Chu Tong were left staring at each other, which they did for a full minute. In the end, though, Shisheng got hungry first, so she shifted her attention to the food. Chu Tong's fingers tapped lightly on the tabletop, his gaze landing, seemingly unintentionally, on the girl who was focused on eating. The dawn light poured in through the window and shone on her, giving her an otherworldly feeling of perfection, purity, and quietness. Of course, he knew it was all an illusion. The girl sitting across from him definitely wasn't pure at all. There was a familiar aura on her, one made up of darkness and ill intent. Perhaps it was the special resonance between two similar people, just like how Shisheng had immediately seen through him upon their first encounter. Chu Tong didn't linger for too long. His assistant arrived shortly after Shisheng's father left to escort him away. As his assistant and Chu Tong left from the front gate of the Shu mansion, he diligently asked, "Young master, should I investigate the Shu family?" This question was asked due to the fact that everyone who could be considered able to affect Chu Tong's life had their background checked so thoroughly they could probably name all 18 generations of relations. "No need." The assistant was surprised. He looked back at the gates of the Shu mansion, and as he thought, is Miss Shu special to the young master? Chapter 8. Rich Family's Young Miss, Arc, Chapter 8. Chu Tong had left behind the 2 checks before leaving. Shisheng picked up the check. "Did I keep him for free for a day? Seems like I've made a profit." Shisheng hadn't really been planning on keeping Chu Tong. With his assets, even if she went broke, she might not be able to keep him. Of course, that didn't stop her from expressing her disdain for him going back on his word. In order to, as the system put it, pretend to like him, Shisheng would send him texts expressing her concern at fixed intervals. Most of the time, Chutong wouldn't reply, though if he really couldn't take it anymore, he would generously give her a reply consisting of a few words. "Don't court death." You saw correctly. Just these 3 words. Xu Chengyue's father broke off any contracts to the company was working on with the Nonggong family. Perhaps the Nonggong family was seeking to compensate them, for they didn't say much. They didn't even pursue any damages. Without Xu Chengyue courting death all the time, Nonggong Jin had no reason to act against the Xu family, hence Shisheng was relatively at ease. Though she wasn't planning on letting Nonggong Jin off anyways. Once Xu Chengyue's mother had resolved the issue at the company, she hurriedly made her grand return. Her mother was a strong woman though, in front of her father. Okay, now I got it. Her mother was a strong woman, though in front of her father she immediately turned into a good wife and mother and wouldn't reveal the slightest hint of domineeringness. Shisheng really enjoyed her time together with them. This is what a family should feel like. However, her mother had the same opinion as her father in that she supported Shisheng keeping Chutong. Shisheng felt exhausted inwardly. With our family's current wealth, there is no way I could keep Chutong. Later, she discovered that her parents seemed to be on stimulants as they raked in money like there was no tomorrow. Her father was actually quite talented. It was just that he usually didn't focus as much on work and more on his family, since his only wish was for their family to be safe and well. Yet now, for the sake of letting their baby girl keep a man, these two were going all out. If it hadn't been for Xu Chengyue distracting them from work with her depression, perhaps the Xu family wouldn't have fallen, or at least not as badly. And so, the people of the upper class discovered that the Xu family company seemed to have been shot full of chicken blood as of late. They were making so much money, everyone in the company was grinning from ear to ear. Xu Chengyue was in her 3rd year of university. Since school had reopened, Shisheng could only pack up and move to the school campus. Fortunately, Xu Chengyue had been very low-key. Probably 9 out of 10 people there wouldn't recognize her, so she wouldn't have to deal with being surrounded and watched. Though perhaps it was wrong to say she was low-key. It was more that only those on the same social standing as her knew her. There might not be anyone in her class who even knew she existed. Looks like the great Miss Xu has decided to come to school. I thought that you'd be turtling at home right now. Shisheng was intercepted just as she entered the school gates. She looked at the person who was blocking her way, and a name popped in her mind. Zhao Wei. This person had an even worse ending in the original storyline. Being both antagonists, Shisheng silently lit up a line of candles for her as she decided not to argue. After all, why should women make things harder for other women? I'm just that great. Yeah, right. Just as Shisheng was planning on going around Zhao Wei stretched out a hand to push Shisheng's shoulder, causing her to stagger. Zhao Wei mocked, "Why aren't you speaking? Weren't you so proud before? I'll see how you can still act so cocky now." Being pushed caused Shisheng to get pissed. What is wrong with your head? If you like Nonggong Jing, go suck up to him. What are you messing with me for? To show off? Please. You haven't even touched his hand, so what right do you have to show off in front of me? After all, I'm the one that dumped Nonggong Jing. You insulted me. How does this woman have the gall to insult me? Wait a sec. She said that she was the one who dumped Nonggong Jing? Zhao Wei smiled coldly. Shu Yue, were you so upset by getting dumped that you're hallucinating? You were the one chasing young Master Jing, yet now you say you were the one to dump him? You want people to laugh their teeth out? When the engagement was dissolved, the two parties involved hadn't made clear the reason. Hence, outsiders didn't know who was the one dumping whom and why. However, some people just naturally came to the conclusion that they wished to believe in, and Zhao Wei was one of them. She was more inclined to believe that it was Nonggong Jing who dumped Shu Qingyue, and not the other way around. Whether you believe me or not, it's your problem. Stop bothering me. Your love rival is now Su Yiyi. Su Yiyi? The one in your course? As one of the protagonists, Su Yiyi naturally wasn't some nameless nobody. Xisheng rolled her eyes at Zhao Wei. If you hadn't ended up miserably in the story, I'd be too lazy to even talk to you. School starts today, so you can go and wait outside Su Yiyi's dormitory and see for yourself whether Nonggong Jing is the one accompanying her. Since I'm feeling generous, I'll point you in the right direction. No need to thank me. Zhao Wei was still suspicious and felt that Xisheng was playing with her. After all, though Su Yiyi was fairly famous, her family was just a normal one. How would she even have the opportunity to meet with Nonggong Jing, who was already working at his company? Xisheng shrugged. She pretty much had, "I've already told you, don't blame me if you miss out on true love," written all over her face. Even when Xisheng left, Zhao Wei still hadn't snapped out of her gaze. Xisheng's school had dormitories, though the time Shu Qingyue had spent living there could be counted with just her fingers. This semester, because Xisheng was planning on reliving university life, as well as avoid her parents who were still trying to get her to keep Chu Tong, she had decided to live on campus. Quite a few rich kids had graduated from this university, and once those people had reached a certain level of influence in society, they started to practically throw money at the school that taught them to demonstrate to the world that they hadn't forgotten their roots. As a result, the dormitories at school were rather comfortable. Though one dormitory room housed 4 people, it was quite spacious. When Xisheng reached the dormitory, there was no one there. Recalling where Shu Qingyue's bed was, she went to go sort out the place. She had just finished unpacking and arranging her belongings when the door was opened. Noise entered through the doorway. There appeared to be quite a few people having fun in the hallway outside. The one who opened the door was a short-haired girl. Seeing Xisheng, she blanked out for a bit before walking in and examining Xisheng's bed and desk area. "Shu Qingyue, you're staying in school this semester?" The number of times this doormaid of hers had returned to the dormitory since the first year of university could be counted with her fingers. Hence, seeing her present all of a sudden, it would be weirder if she wasn't surprised. Xisheng attempted to recall who this person was before finding out who this person was in a random... Xisheng attempted to recall who this person was before finding out in a... That is just awkwardly worded. Xisheng attempted to recall who this person was before finding the information in a random corner of her mind. Xia Ning. Shu Qingyue wasn't too close to her dorm mates. As Xisheng hadn't planned on improving their relations, she merely nodded her head politely before going back to reading her book. Xia Ning stood awkwardly for a few seconds before going to unpack her things too. "Yi, don't cry. Just treat that woman as a madman. For now, we have to hurry up and put ointment on your face. Those rich people think they're so amazing, but look what kind of character they have." Shisheng face-palmed herself weakly. Shit. I forgot I was staying in the same dorm as her. In fact, had it not been for Chengyue, Su Yiyi and Nang Gongjing would never have been able to meet in the first place. Seems like I'll have to move out. I don't want to live with Su Yiyi. I'm not crazy. 2 people entered from outside. Su Yiyi was being supported by another girl whose face was filled with anger and curses spewed out of her mouth.
Shoo.
Su Yiyi froze upon seeing Shisheng in the dormitory. There was a distinct handprint on her face. It was clear she had been slapped by someone just now. Yi, what happened? Xia Ning went forward to express her concern. The girl supporting Su Yi immediately spoke. It's that Zhao Wei. She came out of nowhere and slapped Su Yi for no reason. The girl recounted what happened in a voice filled with righteous indignation. Translator's note, or translator's corner. This may contain spoilers, so if you don't want to know spoilers, skip to the next section. After having read the last arc, the one about Shisheng's past, my heart freaking broke when I reread her thoughts about the family in this chapter, even though it was just one line. I haven't read that chapter yet, so now I'm curious. Chapter 9. Alright, I'm probably going to take a break after chapter 10, because that's halfway through this arc, and I did my voice lessons in the morning, or my voice homework in the morning, and then I read a whole bunch of this, so after that I think my voice is pretty shot. So chapter 8 is what I'm on chapter 9. So 2 more chapters, and then I'll take a break. And, pick up later. Rich Family's Young Miss Arc, Chapter 9. Though Zhao Wei didn't trust Shisheng's words, she couldn't help but succumb to the common vices all women were prone to: curiosity and suspicion. Very progressive of you, author. In the end, she still ended up waiting outside the dormitory building. She just so happened to be in time to see Su Yi getting off of Nangang Jing's car. As the villain, she immediately embarked on her road of courting death. Once Nangang Jing had left, Zhao Wei straight up went and gave Su Yi a slap. Just because she's rich, she thinks she can just bully people? Now even Xia Ning had a face full of anger. The other 3 inhabitants of this dormitory were all children of normal families. Zhao Wei was one of the popular girls of the art stream, so it wasn't a surprise they knew of her background. However, Su Yi couldn't bring herself to care right now about the 2 who were angered for her, as her mind was filled with, why is Su Chengyu here? She looks like she's planning to stay in the dorms this time. Is she planning on taking revenge on me? While Su Yi's thoughts were in a mess, Shisheng's phone rang. Seeing Chu Tong's name on the screen, Shisheng's face darkened. I send him messages every day, but he only ever replies when he feels like it. If he doesn't, he completely ignores me. What's he calling for now? With that in mind, she let the phone ring for about 10 more seconds before picking it up. Come downstairs. 2 simple words in an unhurried voice was all she got before all she could hear were the sounds of people busying themselves. Shisheng. Damn you. She got up to take a look out the window and, as expected, saw a Porsche parked downstairs. Shisheng definitely recognized Chutong's car. For the sake of that damnable hidden quest, Shisheng could only pick up her bag and head outside. I thought she wasn't staying in the dormitory. Why did she suddenly decide on moving back? Dunno. She was here when I got here. Xia Ning shrugged. The other girl humphed in disdain. She must be kept by somebody. We've hardly ever seen her come back to the dorms, and she's wearing all branded clothing. Maybe she got dumped, so she's moving back in?
Ah, Nan, how could you say that about Cheng Yue? Su Yi spoke in a soft voice.
I didn't say anything wrong. Look at how proud she's acting. Who she's looking down on, eh? Xia Ning ran to the window and looked out just in time to see Xi Sheng knock on the car window. Hey, come check it out. That's a Porsche, right? Nan and Su Yi both went to the window side, upon which their gaze was immediately drawn to that eye-catching car. They only saw feel like it's a tongue twister every time I say her name. They only saw Xi Sheng seem to exchange a few words with someone in the car before opening up the door and getting in. Look, I was right, wasn't I? She's totally being kept. Though Annan's voice was filled with disdain, her eyes couldn't hide the envy she was feeling. That's a Porsche. Someone who can own that kind of car definitely has a high status. Su Yi gave a forced smile.
We shouldn't stick our noses into other people's business.
Due to Xu Chengyue's hardly ever showing up, and hence having little time to interact with her dorm mates, only Su Yi knew that Xu Chengyue was from a rich family. They weren't able to mingle with the elite class. Even if they heard some rumors from someone, those people would always refer to Xu Chengyue as Miss Xu. Added on how Xu Chengyue hardly ever showed her face, it was no surprise they didn't know about her family background. And we can tell Su Yi is just not a simple character by the fact that she does not mention that she knows, even though these people are slandering her. This is not a girl with a pure and kind heart. Of course, we already knew that, seeing as she just slept with an engaged man and has no feelings towards the woman that she cheated with him on. Okay. Xi Sheng was dragged by Chu Tong to a high-class party filled with successful people, the type that would only be seen on the business and finance channel on TV. She really didn't understand why Chu Tong wanted her to be his companion for the party. By the time Chu Tong sent her back, it was nearly 11 p.m. Mr. Chu, my appearance fee? Xi Sheng extended her hand. Those people at the party looked at me weirdly. I feel like I've been stared into a Swiss cheese. I need something to make it worthwhile. Chu Tong looked down at her hand before extending his hand to hold it. What are you doing playing foul? Xi Sheng jerked her hand back, dislike clear in her tone. Holding hands with me is very expensive. Miss Xu has made a profit. Chu Tong gave her a shallow smile. In the darkness of the car, light from the outside outlined his handsome features, making him look like the devil who was seducing her into joining the dark side. Xi Sheng shuddered and her pupils dilated. This damn pervert. She swiftly got off the car and slammed the door shut before walking back to the dorms in her high heels. When Xi Sheng walked back into her room, she found her dorm mates hadn't slept yet. Seeing that Xi Sheng was dressed up very fancily, Annan snorted. What did you even come back for if you were going to be out this late? What did you even come back for if you were going to be out this late?
Annan,
Su Yi called out. Turning to face Xi Sheng with an apologetic face, she spoke.
Annan didn't mean any harm.
Xi Sheng coldly swept her gaze before fetching her clothes to the bathroom to have a shower, not speaking a single word. Look at that attitude. Annan's voice was very loud. The people next door probably heard her. When Xi Sheng came out of the bathroom, she found Su Yi standing at the bathroom entrance. Upon seeing her, Su Yi spoke in a suppressed voice.
Why did you decide to stay in the dormitory?
Why can't I? Is this school opened by your family? Xi Sheng looked funnily at Su Yi.
No, I didn't mean it that way. I was just... Su Yi clutched onto the hem of her shirt, her face filled with grievance. I didn't expect it to turn out like that. That day It really wasn't on purpose. However, if you looked closely, you would be able to see that there was a triumphant look in her eyes that was hard to detect. Move aside. She had drunk a bit of wine just now and was beginning to feel the after effects, so she was not motivated to continue putting on an act with Su Yi. She just wanted to go to bed right now. I'm sorry. I really didn't expect things to turn out that way. I know I can't make it up. I know I can't make up for all the harm I caused you. Shisheng rubbed her forehead as she pushed Su Yi, though not with a lot of force. At most, it would get her out of the way. However, Su Yi fell to the ground, which made a loud noise, attracting the attention of the other two. From their perspective, it looked like Shisheng had pushed Su Yi, causing her to fall. Shucheng Yue, what did you push Yi for? Annan jumped off her bed and roared angrily at Shisheng. Shisheng ground her teeth. Really, female lead Sama? What was the point? All right, there's a new game I decided on. Breaking the flagship. Though Shu Cheng Yue didn't say anything about this, but since Su Yi insists on making things difficult for me, I guess I will reluctantly play along. She was in the way. Shisheng gave Annan a big, mocking smile. You. Annan, I'm fine. She didn't do it on purpose. Su Yi pulled Annan, who was on the brink of bursting, as she gently explained on behalf of Shisheng. Shu Cheng Yue, how could you push Yi? Xia Ning joined in too. Although her tone was nicer, clear dislike could be seen on her face. If you're going to stay here long term, then we all need to get along. Just because Yi's a pushover doesn't mean you can bully her. Ning Ning, I'm fine. Su Yi got up from the ground as she shook her head at Xia Ning, giving off the impression that she was putting on a brave front. However, in Xia Ning's eyes, it looked like Su Yi just didn't dare speak the truth due to her fear of Shisheng. This caused her impression of Shisheng to worsen. The person involved has already said it's fine, so stop sticking your nose into other people's business. Shisheng walked around Su Yi. 2 steps later, she slowed down and she slowly looked back and smiled. Even if I did bully her, it's what she owes me. Su Yi's expression changed drastically while remaining doubtful inside. She didn't understand why Shu Cheng Yue had suddenly become unpredictable. She used to be able to fool Shu Cheng Yue with a few words, but now she seemed to be seen through it at first glance, leaving her feeling vulnerable and embarrassed. Shisheng returned to her bed. Su Yi, weren't you so enthusiastic about pretending like you owed me? Then I will kindly oblige. Author's note. A friendly reminder. Even if you don't like the book, I hope you won't just insult it. Every word was painstakingly typed down by me. If you guys don't like it, just remove it from your reading list and close the tab. I hope you can all show understanding for us authors and remain cute little readers. Those who have read my other novels should already be aware of this one and only rule. Also, this book is hitting the shelves. I'll repeat the most important part 3 times. It's going on sale, on sale, on sale. The contract's already been signed and the status should change in a few days. Translator's Corner. Good job, Su Yi. You have single-handedly managed to put the idea of breaking up couples into Shisheng's head. Though I guess she would have decided on this later anyways, but still, it's all your fault, Su Yi. Rich Family's Young Miss Arc, Chapter 10. After this chapter, I will be taking a break because my throat has been poor and abused today. Xu Chengyue was studying in a business course. After all, she was the only child of the Xu family, so she would be the one inheriting all the shares of their company in the future, so this course was pretty much a necessity. Perhaps it was because she had inherited her father's talent for business, for Xu Chengyue's grades didn't drop despite spending all her time chasing after Nangang Jing. There weren't many classes around the start of school. Shi Sheng began looking for a place to rent. As there weren't many classes around the start of school, Shi Sheng began looking for a place to rent. However, all the nearby available places had already been rented out, and if it was too far away, she might as well just move back home. Without a suitable choice, Shi Sheng could only set aside this plan for now. Hence, the idle Shi Sheng could only read books all day. Those who knew her simply thought that she had received a blow from her engagement with Nangang Jing being annulled, and resorted to studying like mad to vent. However, only Shi Sheng herself knew that she was reading a porn starring a gay couple. Ever since that night, Xia Ning and An Nan excluded Shi Sheng even more, and under Su Yi's guidance, intentional or not, we all know it's intentional, Shi Sheng's image turned into that of a gold-digging mistress. Yi, are you going to the ball this weekend? An Nan asked as she returned from outside. Seeing Shi Sheng here, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Senior Ling invited me. Su Yi smiled and nodded. Although Ling Hao had already entered a company, it was just as an intern, so his time was still mostly spent in school. After all, Su Yi was here. As a loyal protector, how could he leave her alone? Every year when school reopened, there were 2 evening parties. One where anyone could enter, while the other could only be entered by those who had an invitation. Frankly speaking, one was prepared for the students of normal family standing, just like an orientation welcome party. The other, meanwhile, was prepared for those of the elite social class. Of those who received the invitation, only those who received the invitation could attend, and each person who did could invite someone else along with them. So you're going to the West Auditorium, and not with Ning Ning and I? Anan's gaze revealed envy and even some jealousy, since she and Ning Ning could only attend the ball at the South Auditorium. Su Yi smiled embarrassedly. Senior Ning invited me, and I couldn't just refuse him. An Nan waved her hand. Senior Ling is a great person, Yi. You have to hold on tightly to him. I heard his family standing isn't bad. Su Yi's face turned even redder as she muttered something inaudible. Female lead Sama, why are you blushing? Do you still remember your true love, male lead Sama? Shi Sheng silently flipped a page of her porn book. Yi, there's a delivery for you. Jianing opened the door and placed the package she was holding on Su Yi's bed. This package so big, just what did you buy? Su Yi shook her head innocently. I didn't buy anything. Open it up and have a look. An Nan pushed Su Yi. Open it up and have a look. An Nan pushed Su Yi over. Su Yi could only open the package in front of them. Heavens, what a beautiful gown. Heavens, what a beautiful gown. An Nan gasped as she lifted it up from the package. The gown's main color was white, and it came with a belt. A red pattern was sewn on the skirt portion, which attracted the eyes. It was probably sent by Senior Ling, right? No wonder he's the idol everyone wants to get married to. I'm so envious of you, Yi. Su Yi smiled. Pride was practically leaking out of her eyes, especially when she looked at Shi Sheng. This gown wasn't sent by Ling Hao, since he had already given one to her last night, which she had accepted. Shu Cheng Yue, didn't you ride around in luxury cars all day? Aren't you going to the ball this weekend? Once Annan had finished expressing her envy for Su Yi, she couldn't help but point the gun back at Shi Sheng. Seeing Shi Sheng ignoring her, she continued scoffing. What? Don't you have anyone willing to take you? Don't be jealous of our Yi. How would a person like you have any qualifications to attend that kind of ball? Annan, Cheng Yue will definitely be able to go. Don't gossip. Shu Cheng Yue hadn't attended these balls for the past 2 years, so Su Yi wasn't clear on whether Shi Sheng had an invitation or not. Hence, she stopped Annan. Tch, as long as she doesn't use her underhanded methods to get one. Excuse me, but is fellow student Shu Cheng Yue here? Excuse me, but is fellow student Shu Cheng Yue here? A petite girl knocked on the door before peeking inside. What's the matter? Shi Sheng got up and walked to the girl, who examined her closely, probably verifying her identity. Once she was done with her examination, she passed the bag she was holding over to Shi Sheng. Sis Wei Wei told me to give this to you. Shi Sheng didn't receive it as she furrowed her brows while asking, Zhao Wei? The girl nodded. Is there something wrong with her brain? The girl was stupefied, and she froze before hurriedly speaking. I've done my tasks, so I'll just go now. She made off after setting the bag down in front of Shi Sheng. Shi Sheng bent over to pick the bag up when Annan furiously charged over to Shi Sheng and smacked the bag out of her hands, causing it to fall on the floor. You're in cahoots with Xiao Wei! The bag fell to the floor, revealing its contents, clothes that were similar in style to Su Yi's. Annan took it out. Apart from the size, it was pretty much exactly the same as Su Yi's. Shu Cheng Yue, just how has Yi provoked you that you joined hands with Zhao Wei to harm her? Cheng Yue, you and Zhao Wei? Su Yi's expression was filled with shock, as if she had just discovered something unthinkable. With such an imagination, you guys can go write stories. Zhao Wei probably got to know what dress Su Yi had from somewhere, and so specially sent this to make her uncomfortable, or scare her, depending on how active her imagination was. Shu Cheng Yue, just what are you planning? If you don't explain it properly, you're not leaving this room. Annan then turned her head to face Su Yi and said in a soothing voice, Yi, don't worry, I'll protect you. Finding it funny, Shi Sheng looked at the two like they were idiots. What are you laughing at? This is the school. I'm telling you right now, Shu Cheng Yue. Don't think that just because you seduced a backer, you can do whatever you want. You're just used goods. Pah! Annan was stunned by the sudden slap and only reacted after a long moment. You hit me! Her family was considered pretty well off, and her parents had never hit her before, but now this slut dared to hit her. Keep your mouth clean. Su Yi, leash your person properly. Don't let her out to shame herself. Su Yi shook her hand. Leash properly? This slut is taking me for a dog? Shu Chen Yue, you slut, I'll kill you! Annan cursed as she pounced towards Shi Sheng, who nimbly dodged her and then tripped her for good measure. Losing her balance, Annan knocked Su Yi, who had been planning to breaking up the fight, over. This caused Su Yi's forehead to slam into the table leg. Su Yi drew a sharp intake of cold air. That collision caused her head to feel dizzy. Annan hurriedly helped Su Yi up. Yi, are you Yi? Yi, are you okay? Jia Ning, who had so far kept her distance, rushed over as well. Your forehead is bleeding. Annan, quickly help Yi up. They hadn't closed the door just now, so the commotion had caused someone to call the teacher in charge. This teacher brought a few students into the room, causing the fairly spacious room to become a bit crowded. "What's all the fuss about?" The supervising teacher made a stern face and asked in a severe tone, "Why are you fighting in the dormitory?" "Teacher, we weren't fighting. It was Zhu Chengyue who pushed Yi Yi on purpose, causing Su Yi Yi to be injured," Annan immediately spoke. "Look, Su Yi Yi's head is injured." I think it sounds better. "Causing Su Yi Yi to be hurt. Look, Su Yi Yi's head is injured." That's less repetitive. Translator's note. I don't usually use the onomatopoeias given in the RAWs unless it sounds better to leave it, or I have no idea what the sound is. In this case, it's the former. I don't know what gender the teacher is, but from logical standpoint of view, it should be a female one since this is a girls' dormitory. Also, Annan, you bitch. And that leaves us off with the end of chapter 10. To anyone who happened to be listening, thank you for joining me. My throat has left this world and joined the choir eternal. So I am taking a break because I have been streaming since this morning and it is 3:30. So thank you very much, and I will continue streaming the second half of this arc in the future. Thanks again.